So, welcome. Today, I'm going to be telling the story about the events of my recent stay in the hospital. And I want to emphasize before I get started that the story that I'm telling is not the message. It's going to be very different. It's not one of our typical Bible study lessons. It really is just the story. But again, the story is leading up to more. But today is just the background. And I said this in an email. I said, my story is merely a canvas to show God's glory. And it's all about Him. Today, the lesson is going to sound like just a bunch of facts and story and all. And I want to give you the background. I'm going to tell as much as I can of the story of the 10 days I spent in the hospital, the 2 surgeries. I thought I was going in for one. The purpose of this and a lot of the details is not to get sympathy, but merely to lay out the canvas for the real story about what God did and what He's still doing. Today is an introduction, you could say, for a series of 6 lessons to follow. There were many nights that I sat in the hospital and I couldn't sleep, and so I literally just took and I wrote notes in my phone about these 6 lessons that I learned. And the lessons are in chronological order, as in the order that I learned them, you might say. And that is why I want to start by telling the whole story, and is why I want to encourage you to watch the lessons in order. They'll have numbers on them so you can tell what the order of them is, as well as a name, and that way you can tell what order they're in. So if you miss one, try to watch them in order, and it'll make more sense that way. So I'm going to start with a background about my condition. I'll be giving a lot of medical stuff, and the purpose is just so you can understand what was going on, and it leads into the rest of the story. But I've had a heart condition for about 14 years. I guess we learned that it's a genetic heart condition, and it's gotten worse over the years. And about, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, they decided that it was risky enough that needed to install a defibrillator so that if my heart were to stop beating, it would start it back up again. The defibrillator also had the ability to have a pacemaker in it, so it could be a pacemaker, but that function was not being used. So during the last year or so, my condition has worsened to the point where if I did anything strenuous, like we took a couple trips and I did more walking than normal, and when I lay down at night, I could not breathe if I was lying down. I would have to literally sit up perfectly straight just to breathe. And so we talked to my doctor, and he recommended that I have possibly some other surgery. So we actually went and talked to the surgeon. There were a couple options. We couldn't help but feel like the Lord led us to this one option, which included open heart surgery, which isn't exactly something that's you look forward to, but if it was going to help, we were willing to do it. So originally this surgery was scheduled for March 24th, and you know what happened in March. COVID-19 hit, and of course the surgery was all surgeries were canceled unless they were emergencies, and so it was delayed. And we waited as long as we could, and then we kept in touch with the surgeon. They would call us, their office would call, it seemed like once a week. And we finally got into the month of May. In the beginning of May, they said that they thought that by mid-May they were going to get to the point where somebody could, a loved one, family member, could stay with you in the hospital. So we scheduled for the last week of May, which was right after Memorial Day, I guess the 26th or 27th. We were scheduling it for then so that we figured somebody, my wife Lisa, would be able to stay with me. And it didn't work out that way. We found out about a week or so earlier that I was going to have to go by myself. Rather than rescheduling it, we decided to go on anyway, which in hindsight was painful, but it actually was a blessing in disguise as well, which I'll describe probably in a later lesson. But I thought, well, we can handle it. It's only going to be 4 or 5 days. He said if I went in, I'd probably go home. I actually had the surgery on Wednesday, and they said, you'll be out by Saturday or Sunday. I thought, well, Wednesday to Saturday, Wednesday to Sunday, we can make it, right? So I was admitted to the hospital on Tuesday the 26th for pre-op testing. I couldn't go home because I had to have the COVID testing, and they said once I had the COVID testing, I couldn't leave again. So I stayed that night. I had several people call me, several of the church staff called to encourage me, pray with me. And I was confident. I mean, I was at peace. I was joking. I mean, I was teasing the hospital staff and all, but I was ready to go. I thought this we can do this. This is no problem. So I had open heart surgery on Wednesday, May the 27th. Just to give you some description, because people think open heart surgery, they automatically think bypass surgery where you have blockages, and that wasn't what they did. The purpose was literally to go in the middle of my heart. Your heart has a left and right side, and down the middle of it is something called the septum, which separates one side from the other. So my divider in the middle of my heart was too thick, so they were going to slice off the excess so my heart would be able to work better, because if it's too thick, it wasn't able to pump properly. So they went in to do the surgery, and come to find out, they knew it was thick, but they really didn't know how thick it was. They said the surgeon came back and said that 40 is bad, and mine was actually 62, and he cut it down to 6. Now, if you don't know, of course, they didn't tell you the what that meant in numbers that we could do, but that's all in millimeters. So in other words, something that we can all relate to, the normal thickness of the septum in between the two sides of your heart is about 1/4 of an inch. So imagine 1/4 of an inch, and mine was over 2.4 inches thick. So it was a miracle to me that it was actually, I was functioning as it was, considering that it was basically 10 times as thick as it should have been. We'll talk about that more later. While he was in there also, he was moving around my heart, which, you know, is a great thought, but he found a hole in my heart, which he also was able to repair. He said I had some leaky valves, which they decided to just leave like they were, and not deal with them because we had enough stuff going on. The surgery, like I said, he cut off basically 90% of that septum. Well, that material, that muscle or whatever, tissue, has the electrical wiring where your heart talks to each other. The two sides of the heart talk to each other. So basically now I have something called total heart block or complete heart block, which means that one side of my heart cannot talk to the other side of the heart. So from now on, I'm totally dependent on a pacemaker to keep my heart pumping properly. We weren't really worried about that. We knew that was a possibility, but I already had defibrillator pacemaker installed, which I mentioned a minute ago, and so we thought, well, if worst case scenario, you just turn the pacemaker on. Seemed like it'd be very simple, but you'll find out in a minute it wasn't quite that simple. Wednesday night, the surgery, of course, was Wednesday. Wednesday night, they got me off the ventilator. I was, of course, in intensive care, and I was able to actually have a brief conversation with Lisa on the phone. I honestly don't remember much of any of it, of course. That night, I felt bad. Sick, I guess. Of course, I felt bad, but I mean, I was on pain meds, but I just felt sick. I couldn't describe it. I, of course, could not move. And I was sitting there, and I couldn't move, and I couldn't get to the nurse in time. And I got sick, and of course I actually ended up throwing up on myself several times during the night. And you think about it, there was nobody there to help me. I was totally dependent. We'll talk about that in a future lesson. The next day, Thursday, I'm laying there in ICU, and a bunch of people come in my room. I'm like, okay, what's this all about? Coming to find out, they were troubleshooting the pacemaker defibrillator. I'll call it a device probably here in a minute. The device that I had, because they were trying to use it to pace my heart at 80 beats per minute, but I was only at maybe 50 beats per minute. And so all these people were sitting in there and they're talking. I think they really did not think I was aware enough of what they were talking about, because they were talking about me in front of me. But I did pick up on some of it. I won't get into the details of it. But in this process, they learned that I had apparently had an issue for several years that nobody had noticed. And during the surgery, one or more of the wires from my device had become dislodged. So it was no longer in the correct place to do the function they needed to do. So they could not use the pacemaker function to pace my heart. And so they ended up doing some reworking of the device, and they basically had to turn off the defibrillator function so that it could pace for a while. So now I found out I was going to have another surgery to replace the device and the leads and all the wires, because the wires weren't all working right. So I found out I'm going to have to stay in the hospital till sometime next week. They didn't have a date. They couldn't tell me when. So my stay has now extended from Saturday, Sunday going home to sometime next week. It's kind of funny. A lot of people were praying. Our class had got together, and a lot of you had been praying. They said, let's pray that I could go home on Saturday. That'd be great. And so now I learned it's going to be the following week. I jokingly told Lisa, I said, we're going to have to fire all those people that were praying for Saturday, because it didn't work out that way. We'll talk about that again also in a future lesson. So I was transferred to a regular room on Thursday evening. Friday, I woke up Friday morning. I ate a little bit. I think I had a few bites of a blueberry muffin, but I just felt nauseous, and I felt that way for quite a while. By dinner time, dinner came, and they brought beef tips and rice. And I thought, well, I need to eat a few bites of something. I mean, I like beef tips and rice. Surely I can eat some of this. I ate a few bites, and I threw up what I ate. And that was honestly the last solid food that I ate was from Friday night until the following Thursday morning because I was so sick. Saturday and Sunday, I ate nothing, and I started drinking very little. I was just so sick. I just sat in the chair. Sorry. I just sat in the chair in my room with the TV off, doing nothing but listening to the clock tick. If you've ever done that, that makes for some very long days. I couldn't watch TV. The mere thought of food made me sick. I could not stand to see a commercial come on that had food in it. So I just sat in the chair. I had a chair beside the bed, and I just sat in a chair and just sat there basically, and I couldn't do anything. I didn't feel like doing anything. I wasn't in the mood to do anything. Saturday was kind of bad, but by Sunday, doing a whole day of that, I was really going downhill. By Sunday night, I didn't even feel like talking to Lisa on the phone. I normally talk to her every day, but I'm like, I don't even feel like talking. I just texted her, and she knew something was wrong. So Lisa called up the nurses. I think she caught the beginning of the evening shift around 7:30 or so. She called up the nurses and said, you got to go check on him. Something's going on. And at the same time, she asked you guys in the class to send me some emails or texts because I needed encouragement. And I have to say, those emails and texts help more than you'll ever know. It was nice being able to get a text, and I tried to respond to most of them, and I would reread them, because believe me, I had all night. And that's what I did for quite a bit of the night. And the rest of the night, I sat and I prayed. Sunday night, I think I finally reached the point where I was totally at the end of myself. And I knew the only way I was going to make it through was for God to intervene. Up until then, I thought, I can make it, I can do it, I can manage. And I finally got to that point where I'm like, no, I can't do this no more. If I have to do this for another week, I'll just go crazy. I woke up Monday morning. They tried something a little different that night. Monday morning, the nausea was a little better. I actually at least got to the point where I could watch television and see food without getting sick. And I actually was able to eat Jell-O, which was kind of funny because when I went in there, I made jokes about, I actually told the person when they asked if I had any allergies, I said I'm allergic to green Jell-O. They didn't even realize I was joking. I had to tell them. But I was joking about Jell-O. So ironically, Jell-O became my new diet. And by this time, I think Sunday night, they'd actually put me back on an IV because I wasn't eating. And they switched me over to a liquid diet. So I got chicken broth, Jell-O, and some little lemon icy cup thing. And coffee, which I don't like. I couldn't stand the smell of the chicken broth. But I ate the Jell-O, except for the days, honestly, that the green Jell-O came. And then I ate the lemon icy cup, which actually was pretty good. So I lived off Jell-O for Monday and Tuesday. By this time, they found out that they had scheduled, we didn't know when they were going to be able to schedule the surgery because they're going to have several teams there to do this. I learned that the replacement surgery for the device, the defibrillator thing, was going to be on Wednesday. So Monday and Tuesday, I'm waiting for Wednesday. But honestly, I was a bit worried about the second surgery. I had two fears of the second surgery, one being that the nausea would come back worse like it was before, or even worse than it was, because I'm like, if I have to go through another surgery and I'm asleep again and it caused nausea again, I don't know, it would just be bad. I was not ready to go backwards, and I was afraid I was going to go backwards. And the other fear was that a complication the doctor said that if the surgery has a complication in it, I could actually have to have open heart surgery again. So, to give you a little background of the surgery, when they normally if they were going to replace the device, basically take one pacemaker out and put another one in, they would leave the wires and just take out the thing and put it in. It's no big deal. It's not considered a big type surgery. The problem was they were going to have to go in and come to find out they're going to have to use a laser and go in to cut the tissue to get the wires out. If they were to make a mistake and cut the wrong thing with the laser, my heart it would start bleeding, and I could literally bleed out before they could get me to the OR. So as part of this surgery, they had to have the group of people there for the replacement surgery. They had to have a surgical team there in case I had to have open heart surgery. And they also had to do, basically, if you ever had the balloon angioplasty where they go up through your leg to put the balloon inside. So they literally went in and they went ahead and pushed it up in there. So the balloon thing was already in my heart just in case. They said that what they could do is they could make the bleeding stop long enough to get me to surgery by opening the balloon up. So they went ahead, so I went through all that same thing with the balloon business. They didn't have to blow it up, of course, but that was in there. So all this was going on. This was not the surgeon actually came in the morning of surgery talking. He actually came in like 2 or 3 times in the room. I have never seen a surgeon nervous before, which was not comforting, but he actually, you could tell he was nervous. He actually asked Lisa, he said that she said a lot of people were praying for him. He says, I was going to ask you for that because I definitely want your prayers. You don't hear surgeons say that too often. He was nervous. I think the fact that he's done the surgery before, but never on somebody who just had open heart surgery the week before. So there was some risk to it, but despite the fears of what could go wrong, and I was like, I do not want to have second open heart surgery again. I can't fathom what that would be like. I'm thinking I cannot take another week of this. But despite all the fears, Wednesday morning, rolled into the OR. If you've been through surgery before, usually they probably take you in there and you're awake, and they move you to the little narrow little bed, and they set up all the stuff on you, and then finally they put you to sleep somewhere in the process. So depending upon your surgery, they kind of let you see some of it before they knock you out. And the thing that was weird, which actually isn't weird, obviously it's God, but I actually had complete peace. That only comes from God when I was laying there. Kind of describe it a little bit. If you've been in those rooms, you know that they keep them, this of course was a heart cath room, and they keep them really, really cold in there, right? So you're laying in there, they put you on this cold bed and everything, and a lot of times they'll put the little warm blankets over the top of you. At least the ones I've been to, they always put the warm blankets on you, like when you have a heart cath or something. But even then, normally I sit there and you kind of have little chills, and you realize that those chills you get are not really because you're cold. The little chills are actually because you have a little bit of nerve. You ever had that little bit of where you have nerves and you kind of shake a little bit from the nerves? And when I went in to have the open heart surgery, I felt a little bit of that. I mean, I thought mentally I was at peace, but there was still that back on my mind because I had that kind of that tense that you'd shake from like nerves, even though I knew I wasn't cold. But that morning I was laying there and I could say I was honestly at peace. Only God could do that. And I know I had so many people praying for me. The surgery was supposed to take about 2.5, 3 hours, I guess. It ended up going about 4 hours. Apparently it was a little slower than he thought. And then when that surgery ended, I had to lie flat on my back for either 4 or 5 hours. I forget which one it was. Because when you have the heart cath going through your leg, so you don't bleed, you have to lie there for a while. So I laid there and slept quite a bit that afternoon, about the best sleep I'd probably got in a while. But when I finally got up, you ready for this? My nausea was completely gone. So I can't remember if I texted or sent a Facebook message, but I said, I got through, woke up, got through the waiting period, and I got up, and my nausea was totally gone. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Only God could do that. So that night I actually ate, I think they gave me barbecue chicken, which what are you people thinking? But I ate some of the barbecue chicken and it actually tasted good. It did give me heartburn. Unfortunately, I had to ask for some heartburn medicine afterwards. But oh my goodness, I had actually eaten. They actually told me I could ask for what I wanted the next morning for breakfast. I got a blueberry muffin and Rice Krispie cereal for breakfast. That was the first real meal I'd had in 9 days. So that was just, again, amazing. So that's Thursday morning, they kept telling me I could go home the next day. I'll go home the next day. Had surgery on Wednesday. If everything goes well, you can go home the next day. So every time I kept seeing somebody, I was saying, I'm supposed to go home today. I'm supposed to go home today. Because if you've been in the hospital, it's like everybody's not on the same page. You have the night nurse, the morning nurse. So I was making sure I was telling them all, I'm going home today. I'm going home today. And sure enough, of course, they had to actually get one of the doctors to put the orders in. But finally, yes, that afternoon, I finally got to go home. I think around 3-ish, something like that. They told me I could go, and I had to wait forever for just a wheelchair to get out of the hospital. But by 4 p.m. Thursday afternoon, Lisa and Greg were driving me home. Kind of reminds me of Gilligan's Island. You know, they thought they were going for a 3-hour tour. It lasted a little longer than they thought. My 5-day stays turned into 10 days. But I learned a whole lot more through it than I think I would have, or I know I would have, if it had taken 5 days. If it had ended in 5 days, I think I would have come out physically helped, but not as much spiritually helped. And I've learned a lot. And so, like I said, there's 6 lessons that came to me during that time that I want to share with you guys. I'm actually going to be putting these lessons on YouTube channel so that people outside of our class can watch them. We try to keep our Facebook page private so that we have privacy for our Facebook page, but I'm going to put the lessons out there because we've had a lot of people, family members, people that are Facebook friends and all, people from all around, from places across the country that have been following the story, and I want them to be able to hear the story as well. So I encourage you to stick with us on the series. Hopefully, I pray that these lessons will help a lot of other people as well. A lot of things is kind of like, well, I already knew that. Well, I thought I knew it too. A lot of times I think it's here, but it's not here. You have to experience some things yourself to really get them. I will say that one prayer request, I guess. Since then, honestly, all the heart surgery part of it has gone great. I was able to get up within a few days. I've been walking and all that. I can go up and down the stairs. I can do a lot. The only problem I've been having is something happened to my hand, the nerves. Had to go back to the doctor a few weeks ago. I guess it's been almost 2 weeks now. I went back to the doctor that did the device replacement because there's something wrong with the nerves in my arm. They said that this sometimes happens from the surgeries. So I can't move all my fingers very well on my hand, and my arm aches all the time. And so I have a hard time sleeping at night, which that's also another lesson I learned because I think I've learned a lot about real appreciation for people. I know a lot of you guys are in chronic pain as well. Some of you have problems sleeping at night. And it gives you a new perspective on it and a new appreciation of it when you have the same thing and you go to bed at 12, wake up at 1, and you realize, oh my goodness, I just went to sleep. And you can't sleep, so I just get up and I literally just walk the floor of the house till I get the blood flowing. It seems like it helps blood flowing in my arm, and then maybe I can lay back down again. It has gotten better recently. But I just can't help think that God wanted to teach me a lesson, and just continue to pray for my healing as well on that. But all else is going well. Things are going well. I go back to the surgeon on next Monday. So I want to say again, thank you guys for your prayers and all. Next week we're going to be covering the first lesson. I'll go ahead and tell you the title. Again, these lessons are in order, so you can figure the beginning of the story I told goes back to this thought process. I tried to put little tidbits. You'll recognize them maybe later in the story that I told. If you go back and listen to the story that I'm telling now, that a lot of the stuff that was in there was for a purpose to match up with the 6 lessons. But the lessons next week is going to be called Arrogant Faith. Kind of a weird title, but you'll understand it when I get to talking about it. But Arrogant Faith. So I encourage you to tune in next week, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.